Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we get together in the middle of the week to learn more about technology. This is the third Wednesday of the month, and that means this is Linux week. So we are here to learn more about Linux. Today we've got kind of like a two-part workshop. Our first part is going to be with Orv Beach, who is going to do the two sessions that we have as a regular for these workshops. He's going to be talking about a desktop environment, and he's also going to be doing our next lesson of taming the terminal. And then after he's done, then Drew King and myself is going to share some backup software possibilities for you in light of this is National Backup Your Computer on the 31st, but we're celebrating it the whole month. So we're ready to get started today, and so I'm going to turn things over to Orv, and he's going to take the first half and share with us.
Good morning, everybody from soggy Southern California. It's been a wet year, but we're okay here. So we're going to talk about the KDE desktop to start with. It originally started as, let me get going here. There we go. It was originally the Kool Desktop Environment. I don't know why they picked K. And for many years, every one of their home-built applications started with a K. They've stopped that recently, but you'll still see a lot of the legacy applications that KDE provides as defaults start with a K. And it was a play on words for the first desktop environment for Unix, the common desktop environment. For those of you who have been around computers forever, and the desktop environment was renamed Plasma around 2013, and KDE is just the name of the development community. I don't know if it stands for Kool Desktop Environment. Obviously not. It's just KDE. So those of you who have been around forever may remember these. Sun workstations were Unix workstations in the 80s and 90s, and this was back before LCD screens. We had these big honking CRT monitors, 1024 by 768, very heavy. When the company I work for had a lot of development workstations and CAD workstations that were Sun workstations. So they had a lot of these monitors around. When Linux first gained its capability to manage multiple monitors, and that would have been around 99, maybe 2000, I absconded with a couple of these surplus ones and got my Linux station running on a couple of these monsters. And back then, they were only 1024 by 768. So this is what you got with CDE. I mean, it is a GUI. It is a desktop environment. It's a low res and fairly primitive. KDE's desktop environment, version 1, middle of 98, and I had gotten a CD from is it CD Bytes? One of the companies that would sell you a CD cheaply, and I booted on this, and I remember thinking, you know, this might make a usable desktop, because I had not been using a GUI prior to that. So this is version 1, and it came with a fair number of apps, and they were usable. A few years later, version 2 continued improving, but you can see that the graphics are, well, they're not sophisticated, usable, but not like today. Version 3 in 2002 continued improving. One thing I want to point out, up in the upper right-hand corner is a system monitor. It's called G-Chrome. I believe Chrome is Dutch for window, and G would be for GNU, which is the software group. So anyway, this is version 3. version 4 in 08, they went through a pretty rough time. They released 4.0 before it was ready and broke a lot of desktops that wasn't even usable. They got up to 4.05 and it was usable, and I got back on it again. I think I used LXDE in between. But you can see the graphics are improving. And the current version is 5.27. They released 5 in 2014. 5.27 actually came out a couple of weeks ago. And I just noticed, I grabbed this screenshot. I just noticed all of the naming of all of the icons and folders is in Spanish, but that's one of the nice things. You can convert to pretty much any language because it's a multi-language desktop environment. Most of them are these days. So this was my Plasma desktop environment, I don't know, 3 years or so ago. The icons are small because by then I had a much higher resolution desktop, much higher resolution screen. And the upper left, you can see G-Chrome, a newer version. There's 2 of them. The one in the upper left is monitoring this machine I'm talking on now. And G-Chrome has a daemon, a monitoring daemon you can put on a remote machine and monitor it from this machine. And that's what the G-Chrome below it is monitoring the server in my workshop out in the garage. It pulls the daemon there and it pulls in whatever parameters you're interested in. Typically, I've got CPU, number of processes, some temperatures, disk activity, and network activity. The lower one tells me it's been up 9 days and a few hours. I don't have that on the upper one because I don't leave my personal workshop on overnight. You can put anything you want on the desktop as far as wallpaper. This happens to be a photo I took from an adjacent town after a rainstorm had moved out. In the lower left, I'm a ham radio operator and we run an IP network over ham radio. And in 2020, I was monitoring these, just a simple ping monitor to make sure those devices are online. They're scattered around Southern California. So if we go forward to today, I didn't clear off all the apps. So we've got 2 monitors here. The one on the left is even higher resolution, landscape based. And on the right is a fairly high resolution monitor, portrait based. On the right hand side, I keep all of my social media because I can't keep in contact with a lot of hams online to help mentor them on various ham radio subjects, and none of them can agree on the real one true social media. So from top to bottom, I have Telegram, let's see, Slack, Mattermost, and Discord. Oh, and I use the web to monitor Matter. What the heck is it? Anyway, another social app. On the left, on the high-res screen, you can see the same 2 G-Chrome monitors in the upper left. Down below it is the ping monitor, and you can see our network has grown. That is not all of the stuff I manage. That's about, I don't know, half of it, some of the critical ones. And as far as the apps go, they're your vanilla Firefox Thunderbird, and just behind it, you can see LibreOffice Impress. In fact, I was editing this very same presentation I'm doing now. Firefox has got a bunch of tabs open, no big deal. One thing I want to point out is monitors got wider because the vendors assumed everybody was going to watch movies, and it turned out that's not the case. So vertical pixel space has gotten pretty precious, and you've got extra horizontal space. So regardless of what OS you use, in order to preserve that pixel space, I move the taskbar, or whatever you want to call it, the panel in this case, off to the right-hand side. That way I don't use up pixels on the bottom of the screen. This is the package manager, and we'll go through it on a live demo here in a minute. It's called Discover. It's got some featured ones up there. Some of them are installed, so the only action is to remove them. Others are not installed, and it offers to install them for you. Color Paint's a paint program. G-Compress, if you have young kids, it's a wonderful, multifaceted educational application. KDE Live is a video editor. Yakuwaki is a drop-down terminal, command line terminal. On the right is Krita. It's more advanced than Color Paint. I've got a solitaire game installed. Lisa is installed. I don't use that. I use Clementine for music. And K-Stars is a wonderful desktop planetarium. And there's tons of others. We'll go through those. Plasma's file manager is called Dolphin. I have no idea why. This is just a screenshot of my pictures directory. And this is on my desktop here. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Everything I keep on this computer as far as files, document stuff, I consider temporary. If it's going to be permanent, I copy it over to the file server, which is triply backed up. You can create bookmarks on the left. You can see there are shortcuts to various folders that I use a lot. You can also split it, which is really handy. You can drag stuff over. You can either copy it over or move it over, and really handy for moving stuff around. The image manager, image viewer, is called GwenView, and I don't remember why exactly. This happens to be a screenshot of OBS, which is OBS Studio is something you would use for producing not live, but recorded videos for YouTube or whatever. It'll let you embed, say a webcam, a presentation, another webcam in it, and then do it. I just pulled this up as a screenshot. But over and above just viewing stuff, on the left, you can see image operations and file operations. You can rotate, crop. It won't let you, other than reducing red eye, and I used it a lot back when I had a film camera, you don't do much with the image itself. If you're going to modify the saturation or hue or something, I use GIMP, where other people might use Photoshop. You can rename it, trash it, copy it, move it. And that's because these operations, if you look down at the left, the lower left, there's 3 tabs, and this one shows a pencil, which is editing. The one to the left of it is information. You can get the EXIF data out of an image and some other stuff. And if anybody's interested, another ham radio operator had a webcam at an aid station during the Ventura Marathon, and he streamed it over the ham radio network. I grabbed it here and pulled it into OBS Studio and then sent it out to a Zoom session that the command post was using in their trailer to monitor the marathon. Worked pretty well. Okay, a real live demo. So let me close this. Close that. I want to talk a little bit about the procedure of adding users. When you install Linux, obviously it creates a user for you, but you can add multiple users. Not only as Linux, we use it as a single user desktop mostly, but it is in fact multi-user, and not only that, it's multiple simultaneous users if you have an extra monitor, keyboard, and mouse installed. There's a little extra hardware required for that, but the computer has no problem with it. When the first user and follow-on users are created, it runs a thing called add user. And what that does is it creates the home directory, and in it, it puts a series of default configuration files like what your prompt's going to be on the command line, how deep your history is for commands, and a bunch of stuff like that. It then hands it over to the desktop environment, and the desktop environment has a set of default templates, which it copies into the user's directory. That defines what the desktop wallpaper is, where the panel is going to be, what the default icons in favorites are going to be, and it will do that repetitively for each additional user. And then that user can go on and modify. What I did was I created a user called presenter, and this is the default environment. Every time KDE releases a major upgrade, they commission people to compete for new desktop wallpapers, and that wallpaper identifies the new release. We're on release 5 now, so this is the 5th one they've done. As you can see, the default panel's down on the bottom, where it should be, where it is by default. And you've got a pop-up here, like you'd expect on Windows. And this is your favorites. I think Windows calls it the start menu or something. And you can add stuff to this, take stuff off, however you want. This is our quick launchers. For instance, let's see, Internet. You can see Chrome here. Chrome was not, Chrome is a system-wide application. Anybody can use it. So even though I'm a new user, any application that's on the machine is available. So I can, by right-clicking it, I can add it to the desktop. And I don't know about you, but I don't like desktop icons. My desktop is always covered with windows, so it's a pain to get to the icons. I'll either add it to the panel down at the bottom or pin it to the task manager. Or you can change the configuration of how it approaches. I'm going to put it on the task manager, and there you can see it down there. Tons of applications. Blender is a 3D image modeler. There's Brave, that's a web browser. Cheese, you can take screenshots. It's a photo booth for your webcam. Something for controlling SDRs, software-defined receivers. Elisa is the music player we talked about. We could go on and on. It's really nice. I don't have a lot of games, but we could play Patience, which is a solitaire game. Minesweeper. Under Office, there's LibreOffice, all the stuff you would expect. That does come by default. If we go look at favorites, you can see Firefox. Discover is the software center. We'll get back to that. This is where you tweak system settings. What else? We got a console is the default command line terminal, and we'll talk about that in the next session. Kate is a nice text editor. I use it a lot. And there's a companion KWrite, which uses the same backend but has a few more features. Dolphin is the file manager. So those are all the things they think you'll need by default. If you want more, you click on Discover, and you can see that there. You could search for something, or you could just look at the applications by category. Let's say I want to add a game. What looks good here? Oh, Super Tux Kart, that's fun. Click on the install, and it's going to make sure I have to use this. I'm the only one who has sudo privileges, so I have to install it as me. So I have to type in my password so the system makes sure it's really me. You can see it's downloading. Yada, yada, yada. Oh, it's a large one. While it runs, we'll talk about some other stuff, and this thing is very good for multitasking. Let's say I wanted to add, I like color paint a lot. Where was it? Graphics. I'm going to add that to favorites. Boom. Now, if we go to favorites, there's color paint, which I like a lot. It's just a simple paint program. I use it for cropping, adding simple diagrams if I want to pointer at something. Let's see, what did I do here? Oh yeah, it's done now. Oh, it started over again. Fortunately, it's already downloaded it, so it doesn't take long to install. Okay, let's see if it's over here. Oh, G-Compress. Okay, would that be under games or educational? Let's see. There it is right there. I don't want to start it up because it's a little too involved. But anyway, that's how you install stuff. Let me go back here. So basically, that's how you can look at everything that's already installed. If you want to clean your system out and remove items you know you'll never use, like Blender. I'm never going to use it, so I'm going to remove it. This is really pretty simple. Come on. Thank you. Okay, all done. So you can see down here on the terminal, here's Discover. It's added there by default. The system settings. I guess we'll talk about that. A little discussion about DE philosophies. A lot of people use GNOME. The people who created and managed the GNOME desktop environment, they know what's best for you as far as configuration. They don't provide a lot of tools for changing things. So there are some open source third-party tools for changing GNOME, or you can edit them config files via a text editor from the command line. KDE, on the other hand, never met a submenu they didn't like, or even a sub-menu. So it's highly configurable. Me personally, I've been using it so long, there are a couple of tweaks I make to the defaults, and I just use it as a tool. But yeah, you can do all sorts of things with this. They have themes. There's a light and there's a dark. I think I have dark. I don't know if this is going to screw up Zoom or not. John, let me know when if I go away. I better not. Okay, all sorts of stuff configurable here. The workspace behavior. Do you want tool pop-ups? You know, desktop effects are kind of weird. You can do all sorts of interesting stuff. If you can remember way back to the version of Windows, wow, I can't even remember, with the funny long name. Anyway, they said, you know, if you buy a high performance graphics card, you can do all these cool stuff on your screen, you know, make it move around or make the windows wobble or stuff like that. And the open source community said, we can do that, you know, with any old vanilla graphics terminal or graphics card on your monitor. And so they did. They were spin-off projects of each other. There were a couple separate ones because they didn't like the philosophy of what each others were doing. And that's possible because it's open source software. And as they went along, they started to look at what the other group was doing and ran into feature envy. So they started swiping each other's good features. And eventually that fork of the software came back together. And once it had stabilized, all the distributions said, okay, you guys done messing around, we're going to incorporate in every desktop environment. So you can do like wobbly windows and Zoom and all that stuff. You can also edit your touch screen if you have one. You can enable or disable. You can define when your screen locks. This is all pretty generic desktop stuff. Users, you can see these are the users. This machine has been hasn't been reinstalled for I don't know, 3 or 4 years. That's me, that's my wife, my granddaughter, a test user, and presenters, which I'm logged in now. Applications, here's the default applications. Well, oh, this is these are the default applications for this user. So they're all dorked up. I could go like this. Web browser is going to be Firefox. File manager is Dolphin. That's okay. Email client is Thunderbird. Terminal editor is Console. Map. We'll do Google Maps, and I don't know what a dialer is. Oh, we'll say Zoom. You apply them here, and it's done. Next time I log in and want to read an email, Thunderbird will pop up. So we could go on and on and on about this, but I think it's a really smooth, sophisticated desktop environment. John, I think I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions at this point.
Okay, we can check on that.
I don't have any in the chat box.
Okay.
Then I'll give you one.
Okay.
Talk to me about widgets.
You
Every time I try to give Linux or KDE a look-see and stuff, those things drive me crazy, and I get lost in trying to figure them out, and the windows on a window, and
well, okay. Down here on the taskbar, if you right-click on it, you can add widgets. And if you see that on the left, there are all sorts of widgets you can add to the desktop. I don't like stuff on the desktop, so I don't use them much. But you could do, like, I don't know, fuzzy clock. There we go. It's 9:30. Puzzles, disk usage. Here, we'll add disk usage. There we go. Some weird stuff here, keyboard layout, lock. There's lots of stuff here. Network speed, that'll be interesting. There we go. So, excuse me. So there's network speed here, but if you open the launcher and go to utilities, or maybe it's system. See if I can find it, console. Here's the KDE built-in system monitor. And I can start it up when I want. It's configurable too. There's processes. Let's see, who's using the most CPU? Zoom, 9%, not too shabby. But anyway, yeah, you can scatter them all over here. If you want to modify them, that's not what I wanted. You can enter edit mode, and I'm not sure how that works. You can drag it over here and, make it larger, stuff like that. The key to widgets is the right click on the desktop. Oh, here, I'm going to get rid of that one. Boom. Okay, cool. Did that help, John?
I think so. I've seen him talk about the big, terrific thing is folders on desktops. And
yeah, you can do that. You can put anything on the desktop you want. Actually, in my default desktop, I do have 2 links to folders on the file server because they're text files in which I have a lot of ham radio network data, passwords, and stuff like that, locations of radios and stuff like that on hilltops. And I do have a link to those on the desktop. So I can just click on it and it'll open up Kate, the editor, and pull in the file from the file server. Those are the 2 I use a lot. So I gave in, and I suppose I could put them on the panel down at the bottom, but they're stuck on the desktop.
good.
I have questions.
Ah,
On an 18-year-old laptop with only 2 gigs of RAM, can I run it if only using it for email and YouTube?
John, what do you think? Would we recommend a lighter weight desktop environment for that?
I probably would, along with you.
Yeah, LXDE or LXQT. There was one called Damn Small Linux, and was it Penguin OS or something like that. The downside to running the lightweight distros is that the GUI tools you use to manage those are fairly bulky. So with the lightweight distros, you end up having to modify configuration files as text files with a text editor. So it requires a little more effort to configure that. But yeah, they will run, something like Thunderbird on a browser. Remember, most of the horsepower required on a desktop is running the apps, at least for Linux, not so much running the desktop environment.
I would say, or if you can, since you are the KDE guy, that the main reason for using KDE is for all of the customization and the settings that they allow that you can do whatever you want to do. So for somebody who really wants to have complete control and make all sorts of changes, then KDE is the one for you.
That's true, but additionally, the initial installation is much more Windows-like, and for a brand new user, it's less of a transition than GNOME's weird Mac OS type desktop environment. I mean, you can get used to anything, but I would think it would be easier transition when you expect the start menu to be in the lower left-hand corner and pops up another menu. And the clock's in the lower right-hand corner and, where you expect things to be.
Very good point. Judy, any more?
Yep. What Linux are you using?
I am using Kubuntu, which is Ubuntu with KDE Plasma. I think it was the last presentation I went through the various flavors of Ubuntu, John.
Mm-hmm. And pointing out that what we're trying to do with our desktop dives is that we are always going to be using either in real or to show in VirtualBox Ubuntu's different versions, so that stays the same through all of our presentations, and then we can just be able to show all the different flavors of desktop environments on the same core.
That's true. And I think I mentioned it before. You don't need to throw away your existing version of Ubuntu to try a different flavor, because the different flavors are just like different frostings on the top, different desktop environments. If you decide you're using GNOME and you want to try KDE Plasma, you go into GNOME's application manager and install the KDE Plasma Desktop. And at next login, you'll have a choice of which desktop environments you want. You could put a dozen on there if you want. Go crazy.
What is the relationship, if any, between KDE and the desktop in Mint?
John, does Mint use GNOME?
Yeah. So
okay.
Mint, just to say, has dropped KDE. They've decided not to do like Ubuntu and have to be maintaining 9 different desktop environments, and they just focused on the 3. They used to have KDE, and now they've just they're sticking with the homemade Cinnamon, which is based on GNOME, and we'll look at that one month. The Mate, which is GNOME 2 based, we'll look at that, and then the XFCE. So it's just somebody else's idea of how a desktop environment should look and work.
And add on to that is such as Debian and Ubuntu.
No, because Debian and Ubuntu are distributions and not desktop environments.
We have a comment from Bill. When you right-click on the panel in Mint, you get Add to Panel. Is right-clicking on the panel unique to each version of Linux?
Not to Linux, it would be to the desktop environment.
What distro does KDE work best on?
Well, I've used it for years on Fedora as the KDE Fedora spin. I think I was mentioning last session that because I was maintaining a lot of Raspberry Pis, they run Raspbian or Raspberry OS now, which is a spinoff of Debian, as almost every other distribution is. I decided I would switch to a Kubuntu or a Debian flavored distribution. They're all pretty much the same, right, John? Cars?
Yep, excellent. And the other thing, the question, which is it run best on? KDE would say it runs best on KDE Neon, which is KDE's special distribution, similar to Kubuntu, but that gets all of the newest stuff for KDE first, because that's their test flagship. So if you want the best KDE experience, that would be on KDE Neon, but Kubuntu is probably really high on the mark. But
one other thing, all of these programs are based on libraries of common procedures and subroutines, and they all refer to them. KDE depends on a library called Qt, or some people call it Qt. And a couple of versions ago, Qt became available on Windows. So if you fall in love with the KDE text editor Kate, or maybe Dolphin, the file manager, you can install it on Windows, because Qt is available on Windows.
Oh, that's cute. I'm sorry. A
a
follow-up from Bill on the right click. Would that also be true about the desktop? You right click on your desktop.
Well, here, let me share screen. We can do this one. So if you right click here, oops, you right click here, this is what you get. Configure the desktop and wallpaper. Configure display settings. This is useful if you have more than one screen. Create new folder. This is where you can put a folder on the desktop, Bill, or you can launch applications. I've never used that. How you can change the icons, refresh the desktop, add widgets. This is kind of a shortcut panel. And while you can log out from the start menu, you can log out here. And if you're going to walk away, you can lock your screens. Although you can also do a shortcut. The meta key is what Windows users would call the Windows key. So meta L would lock the screen. And you can also, under desktop settings, here. See, I only have the one monitor now because I have the other one disabled just for this demonstration. Let me go back to the other one. And it tells you all of, you can change the orientation, and you can see this is portrait, and the other one, I have it, oh, in this user, in this particular user called presenter, I have it turned off and it defaults to landscape. I could do it upside down if I wanted, but I think I'm doing it this way when I'm logged in as me. And let's see, configure desktop and wallpaper. Oh, another thing I want to mention, these are all the wallpapers that are installed by default. You can get new wallpapers. They have a repository. People will submit wallpapers for certain themes or topics, and if approved, they get added to the KDE repository. So I don't want everything. I want, no, what am I looking for? All categories. Let me see. Let's beaches and oceans. There we go. Oh, I like that one. 1920 by 1080. I would have to stretch it a little bit, but here I'm going to install it. I'm going to use it. See if that blows up. Did that change?
Looks nice.
Yeah, there we go. That was hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Downloaded and installed it.
We'll say that's Ventura Beach.
Sure, that'll work.
I will add to that question about the right clicking. It all depends on the combination of the distro, the desktop environment. One thing that we probably won't look at unless it would be months down the road is after we've done desktop environments, you can go to another whole thing where you do not have a desktop environment. You just have Windows managers, and a couple of particular ones that I've used before. Everything is a right click because there initially are no panels and everything is right click. So even your applications are all right click and go to that. So it just the way that the developers designed, and I've seen desktops where you only have a few choices, and right click desktops, you get a lot of choices.
That's right. And if anybody out there decides to try a KDE Plasma, which I encourage you to, I also encourage you to explore the menus, the submenus and the sub-menus, so you know what's out there. You don't have to use it, but it's nice to know the context of where things are located. And I keep locating cool shortcuts.
Yeah, and the other key thing I teach is use your right click button. That is the most important button because that gives you options of what you can do.
Exactly.
Yeah, go looking around.
And in my Windows world, I say right click is your friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Takes you all kinds of different places. Not asking for a demo, but could you have flipped that desktop that you just put up there, the wallpaper? Do you think?
Yeah, he could have opened it up in his
Okay. So to
image.
Okay, so if you wanted to use that as the sunset at Ventura, you'd have to flip it because it sets the other way. Anyway,
well, this is correct.
No, it sets to the right, not the left.
Well, this is the right. You're looking southwest.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
We could make it an East Coast sunset. You know, we could flip it.
Does KDE require System D?
Yes. Well, all of Ubuntu requires System D. That's an OS requirement, not a DE.
And a comment, Puppy Linux runs well on limited resources. And lots of good comments I'll add to the follow-up email. What is Plasma in KDE?
That is the new name for the desktop. Well, it's not new anymore. That is the name for the desktop environment.
Please repeat and spell what was that app, Qt, for running certain apps on Windows.
It's pronounced cute. It's spelled QT. And it's not an app. It's a collection of libraries that other programs include because they depend on them. They don't want to rewrite all those common procedures. So the library is the common dependency.
And that's the end of my questions.
Good. If you have more questions or think of them, put them in the chat box and we can ask Orv at the open mic time. Right now, we're going to ask Orv to change hats to his programming kind of hat and take us through another lesson on taming the terminal.
Well, I'm not putting on my programming hat. I'm putting on my administration hat.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to go through some more commands. Because they're all explained here, I mean, I probably won't do a lot of demo on this, but Judy, I'll make it available immediately for anybody who's interested.
Thanks.
Okay. The terminal runs a shell. We talked about that last time. It's a program that lets you hand off commands to the operating system. Here's some, I found this slide in a presentation I'd done a couple years ago, but we'll go through it again. PWD, print the working directory. It just shows where you're at in the file system. Clear, same as DOS, clear the screen. I use that a lot when I'm taking screenshots. Like clean it up, clean up the screen, and then do the command and take the screenshot. Who's logged on? Normally in a single user system, it's just going to be you, or if you have, say, 2 console windows open, it'll show those as individual users. Prior to retiring, I was a system administrator on Linux systems, corporate Linux systems, and it was not unusual for the list of users generated by who to be 2 or 3 screens full. Who am I? That sounds funny. Of course you're you, but if you're logged in as root and you're not sure of it, who am I will tell you, no, you're root. You're not your regular user. CD, that's same as DOS, change directory to the home directory. CD with nothing else. CD ... is move up one directory because, believe it or not, in Linux, ... is the name of the directory one above. Oh, I had another one I was going to show. I'll show that later. These are bash related, but most of the shell programs you'll find do these same things. And by the way, bash is the name of the command line program that console runs, and bash is common to almost every Linux distribution now. Matter of fact, it's pretty much the default for everything you'll ever run across. So anyway, up arrow, recall the last command. And if you've up arrowed 3 or 4 times, I didn't put it in here, but down arrow will go back the other way. Left and right arrow, you can, oh, I wanted to run that last command, but differently. Up arrow to recall it. Left and right arrows to scroll through it. You can use the delete or backspace, delete characters, type what you hit, and hit enter to rerun it with changed parameters. History shows all of the command line commands you've run since you logged in forever. You know, it's a running since creation. And I'm going to talk more about that. So here's the history command. And you see there's 2005 commands in the history. And how the heck do I find what I'm looking for? Because I know it has something to do with something called something, and I don't remember what it was. So we're going to do a little detour before I show you how to do that. The pipe symbol is the vertical bar, and on my computer, it's above the backslash on the right-hand side of the keyboard. Most keyboards have it there, but you'll be able to find it someplace. I think on one keyboard I had, it was in the upper left corner, but it's the vertical command. It sends the output of what you just, of a command to the next command. And I want to talk about this. Every program has a standard input. Typically, the default is a keyboard. Standard output is typically the screen, but can be redirected. And standard error typically goes to the system log. The numbers there are just the shortcuts for those streams. In other words, in a program, you don't have to type standard out. You can just type 1. What does it have to do with? Things like this. You take, the pipe will take, by default, the standard out of a command, the results of a command, and pass it to the input of the next command instead of having to do it from the keyboard. Here's one, ls-l, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Show all the files in user bin. That's the directory. Send the results of that, which would normally be 4 or 5 screenfuls of listings, and send it to the program called less, which prints them 1 screen at a time. So when you put all that together with grep, there are variations of grep, egrep, fgrep, and rgrep. And this is not the abbreviation for it, but this is what it does. Search a file for a regular expression, which is a string of characters, and print all of those that match. In other words, you search for a pattern in a file. Search for this string in this file. And in the example, I grepped, grepped is a verb, grep is a verb, grepped is past tense. I grepped for the string TWO in the file random_small.txt. And you can see it printed one spot where it found it, and in bash, it highlights it so it's easily found. So it's very handy for looking for stuff in text files. But here, up at the top, I type history, piped it to grep, and said, look for makedir. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instances where I use the makedir command. And the last two, I was testing this for demonstration. And I did this here. Let's search for some sort of command where I refer to OBS, the OBS Studio. And you can see them there. And I want to rerun command, the fourth history command, the command which OBS, which tells you where it's located. So you can see in the next line, I typed !4. If you really want to be known as a Linux guru, that's bang 4. The name of the exclamation point command is bang. That goes way back in Unix history, and I have no idea how it got started. So anyway, bang 4 says rerun history command 4. It reran which OBS, and which reported that OBS resides in /user/bin, which is where you would expect it to be since it's an executable, and that's where binary files, executables, reside. Hope I didn't go too fast on that. Anyway, history gives you a list of commands. I piped it to grep, told it to search for OBS, and I got a result. And then I reran one of them with the bang symbol. So file-related commands, ls. ls just lists the files and directories. It's not very useful. Most often, ls-l will print them in a longer format. When it does, you see all this complicated stuff here. Not just the file name, but there's more stuff. Got somebody wandering around outside. I may have to leave. So here is the end of an ls-l in my downloads directory. On the left is a bunch of funny letters. What they are is the very leftmost character. If it's a D, it's a directory. And you can see that because this particular flavor of bash colors directories as blue. After the D, you can see 9 characters. Those are permissions, and we'll go over them sometime later, but the first 3 are for the user. Second 3 are for the group that the user belongs to, and the last 3 are for everybody else. And you can see just to the right of that says O Beach, that's the user and the group. Then the file size. The file size of a directory is also always 4096 in Linux and Unix. And if it's a text file or a binary, it'll give you the true size. You see down at the bottom, tt5serve.xml is 43 kbytes. The red ones are other stuff, files that are not text. Let's put it that way. The Skype for Linux -64.deb means this is a Debian installation file, and it's what I use to install Skype for Linux. The other red file, the support data, is a .gz file, which means it's a GNU zipped file. It is a compressed file that uses GZ. It's like zip, only it's different. Up at the top, you can see rtsp_scan.sh. The .sh means it's a shell file or a script file. Green means it's executable. And if you look way off to the left, you can see there's no D because it's not a directory, and it's rwx. It means for me, it's read, write, execute. Because that X is there, it turns it green. Another short side detour. Anything after including the dot and afterwards, like .sh at the top and .nse at the bottom, those are for use by humans. Linux does not care about file extensions. They have no meaning. It'll just run the program. It can tell from stuff inside the program what it is, whether it's meant to be run or not, programs, stuff like that. That's a little beyond this, but basically, you can see Simi Valley frequency list, which is the fourth character down, .xlsx. That's an Excel spreadsheet, but even if I clicked on it in a GUI file manager, it wouldn't try and bring up Excel. A, I don't have it, and B, it can tell inside it it's a spreadsheet, so it will launch LibreOffice Calc and bring it up. So anyway, the ls command doesn't need to grep. It has its own file filtering and sorting commands. You may remember if you did anything in batch files in DOS, that an asterisk, some people call it a star, means match any number or kind of characters prior to the dot. So I said ls-l star.ods, list all the files ending in .ods, and you can see it there. There's also the question mark, which means match any character in this position in the stream. So I could have said ls-l mesh map -2022 question star.ods, and then it would pull up anything in November and December that was an ODS file, which, by the way, is a LibreOffice spreadsheet. Is that right? Spreadsheet? Yeah. Yes. Going to go through these others real quick. I'm not going to demonstrate them. They're all explained here. Well, I do have demos for this. Word count for a text file. By itself, it just prints number of new lines, number of words, and number of bytes in each file by referring it to the file name. Hello. There we go. You can either use, I don't know if they call them switches or options, or sometimes both, but frequently they'll have two options. You can either use like this -c count, or --bytes will print the bytes count. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold. -m or -f characters prints the character count. -l or -s lines prints the new line count. And I don't know what the difference is between well, I guess it is -L or max line length. I don't know why anybody would want to type --max-line-length when you could just print -L, and -W print the word count. And here's some demonstrations. I have a biography text, just a text file I send to people who want something prior to me giving a presentation for them. So anyway, you can see the results of WC there, which I don't use very often, but occasionally I will use WC-C, character count, WC-W, 191, and WC-L, you'll notice that the maximum line length is 410. That's because Linux doesn't use, well, let's rewind. How do you define the end of a line? In DOS and Windows, it's carriage return line feed, and that's back from the old mechanical ones. Carriage return means go back to the beginning of the line, and line feed means go down one. In Linux, it doesn't use both of those. It just uses line feed. So you'll notice there's no, when it says 410 wide, that's till the line feed. But I did this in Kate, and Kate is a text editor and doesn't care about word wrap, which is fine for this application. So if you want to look at the first 10 lines of a file, you type head and then file name. This gets real complicated. -C is print the first number of bytes of each file instead of lines, and the minus is print everything except the last number of bytes. That's way more than you need to need to know. If I wanted to see 20 lines of a file called file.hex, let's say head space 20 space file.text, I get 20 instead of 10, which is good because that's more of a full screen. Tail is the same thing. If you type tail file name, you get the last 10 lines, or tail 20 file name, you get the last 20. And again, same options, number of bytes or whatever you want. This is what's really useful. -F or -- follow the file name. It'll show, for instance, the last 10 lines of a file, but it'll continue watching it. And if something gets added to it, like it's a log file, or you're running a program that's outputting to a text file, you can tail that file. And as if the timestamp changes on the file, like it's been changed, it will rerun the tail command and show you the new bottom 10 lines. So you can watch the file as it grows. Very handy. So there's one. Watching the system log, you can see who's logging in, or what a program is doing. And it doesn't have to be the syslog. A lot of these programs have log files in different directories in var log, like my weather program, WeWeather. It's var log WeWeather, and I can watch it and make sure it starts properly if it has any issues. Same deal. You can tail -F 20 var log syslog and watch the last 20. So here's the auth log, is the authentication log for this particular version of Linux. I think it's all of Ubuntu and Debian. Anyway, I'm tailing the file. Notice I was already in /var/log, so I didn't have to show that. I can just tail -F, name of the log. And you can see the timestamps as it goes along. It's refreshing. Again, it's very handy. There are lots of other uses for the cat command. You can concatenate text files, all sorts of stuff. But for the basic use of it, you cat a file name and it sends it to the default standard out, which is the screen. Now the problem is, if it's 1,000 lines, it'll print all 1,000 lines. Oh, the battery in my mouse is dying. Great. There we go. You can print the number of non-blank lines. I've never used these. Oh, you can number all the lines. Oh, that's helpful. Suppress repeated empty output lines. That's never used that. So the way you really display a program like a text file, you don't use cat unless you pipe it to one of these, but more will display a text file one screen at a time. Hit the space bar to advance one screen and Q to quit. The other program is less. You have more and less. Also display a text file screen at a time, space bar or page down to show the next screen, but page up will show the previous screen. And again, Q to quit. So less is better than more in this case. Use less a lot, more not so much. Okay, and this one gets really bizarre. I'll just walk through this. You can sort a file name 9 ways from Sunday. My battery died. The default sorting is numbers come before letters, lowercase comes before uppercase. Sort filename.txt, and the output goes to screen, and it'll be numerics and then letters, and letters will be lowercase, uppercase. There's your numeric sort. Reverse sort, Z to A. Sort by month. I've never used that. See, here's another command I haven't shown you yet. Sort filename.txt by numeric sort, and the right arrow there says send it to a new file. File name sorted.txt. In other words, this will sort numerically and save it in the new file. By the way, if you ran this on a different file and send it to the same file, it will overwrite it. However, if you change that right arrow in the middle to 2 right arrows, it will append, not overwrite. Very important to know. And there was like 3 other pages and pages of options. I wanted to show you one more thing before we quit. Let me close this. And my mouse is dead. Great. Hang on. Let me see if I can. I'm going to power cycle my mouse. See if I can revive the battery. Yeah, it's good for a few more commands. Okay, I'm going to open up a terminal. And you can see that's really, really tiny. We went over this last time. I'm going to switch it to large. Yeah, maybe that'll do. I had mentioned that there are man pages for everything. And there are. And they're comprehensive. So much so that they're almost unreadable. So I'm going to do the man page for LS. Okay, there's your first page, second page, third page, fourth page, fifth page, sixth page, seventh page, eighth page, ninth page, 10th, 10 pages, almost unreadable. Fortunately for the internet, many people have written web pages on examples for Linux commands. If you search, whenever you do a Google search, preface it with Linux, and then the name of the command. So it would be Linux ls examples or Linux ls samples, and you'll have 3 or 4 pages written by different people of the most common options. Much easier to do than look at the man page. There's, oh. That was short. John, I'm about done. Let's see if there are any questions.
Okay, we'll check to see if there's any really, really burning ones that we need to be asked now, or we can save them for later.
Do you have to convert a text file between Linux and Windows, CR, LF, EOF versus NL?
Yes, and there is a Linux utility called DOS to Linux and another one called Linux to DOS that will it will change the end of line characters appropriately depending on which way you want to go.
In that last series of Q&A, did you say System D? If so, what is it?
It's a little controversial. There's well, not so much anymore as than it used to be. It's pretty much accepted now. Back in the old days, 4 or 5 years ago, it was really complex and arduous to ensure that what happens at startup is correct. What starts first, what starts next, and there wasn't any way to say, well, if it's like this, don't start it. If it's like this, do start it. A guy started a program called System D. It's a daemon that runs on startup, and it manages the running system. And over the years, it's grown more and more complex. Some people complain about it, but personally, I'm fine with it because it makes it easier to set what starts at startup, what conditions start at startup, and much, much more. I suspect there's a very long entry in Wikipedia about System D, but basically it just works in the background.
Can you assign paren ls -1 paren to alias paren ls paren? And that one was probably an L.
I don't know. I've never tried that. We can talk about aliases next time. You can like, in other words, ls minus L by default is alias to dir, dir, like in DOS.
That's all I have. Thank you very much. That was great.
Good. And we might have some more questions later. And hopefully people are getting a little bit more comfortable seeing that there's a lot of stuff you can do with the terminal, and you just start slow. Just start playing with ls and list the things and make directories and stuff like that.